When you buy a vineyard, nobody tells you that you're going to have to replant it in 10 years or in 20 years. It's a very expensive process. It takes the vines out of production for about 5 years. So the temptation is to not replant and just live with what you have. But any great wine estate like Chapellet on Pritchard Hill, you just have to put that into the cost of doing business and accept that your vineyard will have to be renewed about every 25 to 30 years. We started the process in 1989 with 5 acres of Cabernet Sauvignon. And we decided that was a sustainable thing to do, to replant about 5 acres a year. Our most recent replanting is a 3.5 acre section of the Hideaway vineyard. The vineyard was no longer giving us the quality or quantity that on a regular basis.
We decided that a complete replant was needed. In the fall of 22, we popped those vines out of the ground.
2023, we did 2 rounds of soil testing, and then last year, 2023 in the fall, we planted a brassica mix. And as a result of the rainy winter and the nice warm spring, that cover crop performed excellently. The cover crop just did a great job helping us to get the ground ready for planting this year.
You get the cover crop out of there, you mow it down, and then you got to work the ground. You got to disc so that it's in a good state for installing your trellis system. So just like grapes, up here on Pritchard Hill, we grow rocks really well too. And that's something that needs to be dealt with before we plant. And we'll do it by machine and even by hand. But that's part of farming here on Pritchard Hill. We'll get a survey crew in here to start making our big squares. We've decided on the spacing we want, and so we calculate the size of these big squares we want to be marked out in the field. Once those are marked out, then we'll bring our crew in and actually fill in those squares and put a mark for each individual vine. When that's all finished, you'll see all these marks out in the open field that will eventually be small stakes, big stakes, and end posts.
We brought in an irrigation specialist to help us design the irrigation system in the new blocks in Hideaway. And he helped us lay out division in the irrigation system to both minimize the amount of pipe needed and maximize how many vines we could irrigate at one time. We have the new section split up into 2 blocks, and in those 2 blocks we have 3 irrigation sets. One set will encompass the entire block. It'll irrigate every single vine. The second one is intended to target just the weak vines that need a little extra help. The third line we put in is actually going to be a sprinkler system for heat prevention in the future.
We do all our planting by hand, and so you'll see a big crew out there with a bunch of shovels and a bunch of mounds and a bunch of holes. So what we're doing on half of that block is we're just planting roots alone. We're going to put those roots in the ground, let them take hold, let that root zone develop, and the next year we'll field graft the Cabernet Sauvignon clone that we want in that field.
The second portion that we'll be planting are called green growers.
And so those will be vines with the clone already grafted onto them.
So we're getting them as freshly grafted plants.
Up here in these thin volcanic soils tend to take a little bit more time to work their way up the stake. But typically on year 3, we'll get just a little bit of fruit. And then year 4 and 5 is when we really start to bump up production.
The main goal there is that you have a large part of the vineyard in its prime all the time. You really need to have your vineyard kind of banging on all cylinders to produce those great wines.